Sarah Milligan with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Today's date is January 28th, 2016. I am here with Steve and Pam Holton. We are in Poteau, Oklahoma, and this interview is a part of the Cowboy in Every County Oral History Project, which is part of O State Stories. So, now we're official. Okay. So I think the first thing I wanted to just ask both of you all, and you can answer this separately, you can also, you can help each other where you think it's helpful. You can not help each other where you don't think it'll be helpful. But I have a feeling you all are going to be pretty easy to do together. So just a little bit about where each of you are from, and a little bit a little bit about your family, who your parents are, and if you have siblings, if you want to talk about that, that would be helpful. A little bit of background. Either one of you can start. You all can sort that out.
Well, I'm Pam Buck Holton. I was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma in 1949. I was the third of 6 children, and we moved to Oklahoma City when I was 11. So I spent junior high and high school in Oklahoma City. What part of Oklahoma City were you in? Nichols Hills. Mm-hmm. We lived. We went from a pretty small home, little red brick home in Shawnee, to a real nice big house and had lots of room. So it was very much fun. We had a golf course right behind us, and that's where I feel like I grew up. And then I went to college my freshman year. I went to several on our street. There were several girls on our street. We all went to Templeville College. It was Colorado Women's College in Denver. It was our chance to go away to school and
hopefully meet Air Force cadets.
That was the plan. I lasted a year. I didn't like being away from home. It was an all-girls school, which was a huge mistake. And so I came back, and at Christmas I said, told my parents I wanted to go back into state, and I had sent all my stuff to OU. And my mother said, "You will not go to college. If you go to OU, you can only go to OSU." I wasn't given a choice.
Why did she tell you that?
My older brother had played football at OSU, and he had decided OSU or OU, and he decided OSU. They had big OU fans, and when they made the transfer to OSU, I think they must have really liked the people better, because they didn't have OSU fans. So I was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and he was playing football at OSU. So I got to go to a few football games. Not very often. They would take us. So then I went back to school my sophomore year. I went to Stillwater.
Mm-hmm. Why did you want to go to OU?
Because that's where my friends were.
Oh, right.
Yeah, my friends who stayed in state, almost all of them were at OU. There were a few who were at Stillwater.
Did many of your friends stay in Temple, or were you?
At Templeville?
Yeah.
Actually, 2 of them did, and they graduated from there. The other 2 of us came back. One went to OU. My best friend, she went to OU, and then I went to OSU. So, So then I made the adjustment. But I didn't meet Steve until my senior year.
At OSU?
At OSU.
Yeah. Steve, what about you? Tell a little bit about where you're from and your family.
I was born just across the border, Fort Smith, Arkansas, but I was raised in Poteau. Finished high school in 1966. My mom and dad both went to OSU, Oklahoma A&M. That's where they met. 2 of my uncles also went to school in Stillwater. At the time I graduated from high school, I had 3 older cousins at OSU. So it was just expected. I never considered another school. I just knew that when I finished high school, I would go to OSU. And while I was there, at one point there were 7 first cousins all on campus at the same time. So that was really neat. And so in the fall, especially, for homecoming, we would have moms, dads, aunts, and uncles all there. And usually on Sunday morning, everyone would meet over at the student union in the old cafeteria area, and we would have almost a family reunion. So it was really neat.
Do you know why that your family was so invested in OSU? Like, why did it start with your dad's generation?
My dad was the first in his family to go to college. Well, I have to take that back. My aunt went over to the University of Arkansas, his older sister. And it was closer, of course, than Stillwater. And the roads, back then, it made Stillwater a pretty good trip from Poteau. And so Fayetteville was a lot more accessible. And I asked Dad about that one time, and he said he was really looking at going to the University of Arkansas, and then got to thinking about that he would be coming back to work with his dad in Poteau, and that he really needed a network and friends and contacts that were Oklahomans, not Arkansas people, and that's how he decided to go to OSU. My mother is from Woodward, and from that corner of the state, I think OSU was just probably a number one choice for most of those kids up in the Northwest.
Was that more agriculturally aligned? Is that what the OSU draw is?
Yes, and with my with my dad too. We've always been in ranching, and he pioneered the broiler industry here when he came back from the war. So a lot of ag ties.
Yeah, and I know we have an interview with your father in our archive, correct?
Yeah.
So we definitely can cross-reference some of that information to find out more.
Right.
So family, okay, that makes more sense. I always wonder, because a lot of people, once you kind of get it in the family with OSU, a lot of people, as parents, are eager for siblings to follow or cousins, or then people and then you go back. But it's interesting to know sort of when that starting point is. Where
that was
it.
And then Steve and I counted up after the homecoming this year. We have 40 relatives that we could name right off who have gone, and most of them have graduated from OSU. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's a
lot.
lot.
of them are on his side, but my brothers and family, their children all went to OSU. So
yeah.
I thought that was.
So all of your brothers went to OSU?
5 out of 6 of
That's
us
what
went
you
to
said.
OSU.
That's-
5 out of 6. One brother didn't. He stayed at Edmonds, went to Central State.
Mm-hmm. All right. So maybe Pam, just back to you a little bit. What were you majoring in? Like what was your focus? in college?
I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did elementary education, and that because I just felt like even if I never taught, I would just have a better understanding of children, and I was very glad that's what I did. And then I did come back and teach just a couple of years, but I got to use it a little bit, but I feel like I used it in my favor with my children a lot.
Was that pretty typical of a lot of your generation to do?
Our
education?
choices, I felt like at the time we could be a nurse or a teacher. That was pretty much what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, and I was not an athlete, which girls, I don't remember any girls being athletes at the time. My sister and I, we were raised with athletic brothers, and
You're competitive.
But we didn't have that opportunity, and so it's real interesting how things are different now. It's much, many more roads open for women.
Was it expected of you that you would go to college?
It was expected of me that I would get married and have children. That was the only thing expected. And that's probably why my dad sent me to college, to find a husband.
Mm-hmm.
I bet. We never really talked about it. All they just would talk about was getting married and having children.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Do you feel like that was the way with a lot of your peers in college?
I don't know about that. Most of my friends, some went into retail, but in my sorority sisters, most of them were teachers. Some did it was called the FRCD. I don't even know, that's what it.
Is it the administrative?
I think though they just went into the retail line of work, and so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did your mom think about you going to college then? If you talked about a little bit what you did.
That was the one. My mother's she told me one time her only regret in life is she did not go to college, and that kept me in school, because there would be some times when it was not going like I thought it should. And I thought, if that's the only thing my mother has regretted, then I need to finish. And I have to say, I've been very proud to be able to say, yes, just not bragging about it, but to be able to say I graduated from OSU. It has meant a lot.
Yeah. So I'm hearing from that, it sounds like that you and your mom talked about that while you were at college as well. Like talked about that opportunity as an opportunity for you versus just a place marker in your
She
life.
was just, the depression kept her from going to school. She was packed up, ready to go. My parents are both from Pennsylvania, and she decided that her younger brother needed to be the one to go, and so she just didn't go. And I apparently always regretted that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Do you remember much about any of your classes or any of your professors?
When people talk, because when people talk
A lot of people don't remember.
I know, when they talk about a different professor, I just think, oh my goodness, how do you remember? I really wasn't a great student. It wasn't what I was in school for, so I was an average student, so.
Where'd you live on campus? I'm assuming you lived on campus.
I lived at Drummond my first semester of my sophomore year, because that's when I went, and then I moved to the Tri-Dot House. So then I lived there until I did my student teaching, and then I moved to Oklahoma City to student teach.
What? So you were Tri-Delta?
Mm-hmm.
What made you choose that organization?
I didn't go through formal rush because I just didn't know if I wanted to do that. And my roommate was a Tri-Delta, and she took me to dinner, and it was like, it seemed like a really nice group of girls who were not pretentious, or it was just a nice, just all different types of people. So I like that compared to a stereotype of some houses. So I was very comfortable there. I was not a real big, sorority wasn't real important to me. This was in the the late 60s, and then I graduated in 71. So it was kind of a time of, although we didn't have a lot of rebellion in Stillwater on campus, it was a time of, Greeks were not they weren't at their high point. It wasn't as important. There was a lot of anti-Greek movement, so it never seemed it wasn't real important to me, but it played an important part of my life, actually, that it got me involved in campus and helped me work on my grades.
What are some of the ways that it got you involved on campus?
Well, just to be parts of different organizations that I would not have done that before. I did Army Blades for a couple of years, which we marched in the homecoming parade. I'm sure they don't have anything like that now. We had little military uniforms, and we ushered at the basketball games. And then my protest to the Vietnam War was my senior year. I didn't do it. I was quite the protester, but I just thought I was trying not to be. I really wasn't much of an activist, but that was a way I could kind of be a little bit of an activist.
Was there a lot of that going on in Stillwater?
I don't think there was. Do you?
Yeah, there was
There's
more,
a little bit.
and more in the late 60s, by 69, especially 70. It was, nationwide. I mean, there was a lot of unrest on campus, and Stillwater, luckily, it never got as extreme as it did. I know even down at OU, they had some protests, and I think maybe they took over the president's office at one point, but it, was more extreme than at OSU. But there were things were not all good, and some of it was racial tensions. A lot of it was the war. In 70, the 4 students were killed at Kent State, and so it's hard to believe that was the level of student unrest that was going on around the nation, but it was pretty extreme, and in some cases it gotten violent. So, but fortunately that didn't happen at OSU.
Right. I think I haven't heard too many people actually talk about. I think it's interesting that you had any sort of stand, because a lot of people don't talk about trying to consciously, unless they were in it all together, like unless they were in it to really make a stand, these sort of moments of defiance that were conscious.
I'm not very defiant by nature, but
Maybe not.
Some things.
Maybe that was even more of a challenge then. But I wonder, was it something that you thought of, or was it something that other people around you were doing as well?
No, it's something that I thought of because the draft was taking, people that we knew, and it was.
And Chris had gone to the Marines.
My brother was in the Marines. My younger brother, he was at OSU and left OSU to go into the Marines, and I was very concerned and frightened for him.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, we'll come back to this. I don't know, let's catch up with you a little bit, Steve, on where you made it to OSU. So why, what was your major, what was your goals, what was your sort of plan while you were there?
My family had numerous businesses here in Poteau, and my dad had come back to join his dad after college and after going to the war. And so it's something that Dad and I we never talked about, but I think I always felt, this kind of unspoken obligation to at least come back and try to work in the family businesses. And so I always had that in mind, and so I majored in business at OSU. Really went up there without any specific thing in mind other than just business administration. And I ended up really marketing became my interest, and I've used that all my career. So
He's good at it too.
That worked out really well. But that was how I ended up in the School of Business. And like Pam, I was an average student, but I was active in a lot of things on campus, and felt like I got as much out of that as I did out of classroom work, and made a lot of friends, knew a lot of people, and
you were related to half the campus, so.
But I had 80 in my high school class, and so going to Stillwater was a big deal. And the girls in that 80, I had gone to school with most of them since nursery school or kindergarten. So I remember it was just like, got to be careful of the terms I use here, but it was. I would fall in love almost every time I walked across campus. I had never seen so many girls, and so many attractive girls. And coming from a small high school, that was just a treat. So.
A difference for sure, right?
But things changed so much, and Pam and I have talked about this from the time I was a freshman in the fall of 1966. And there was just almost like a generation change from my freshman year to 70 or 71. And my sister was 3 years older, and I look back at her college experience and how she was at OSU, but it was a different experience. There was just such a change of culture. My freshman year, we wore slacks and a shirt and tie to class. By my senior year, people were in bell-bottom jeans, and we didn't even know what bell-bottoms were as freshmen. And I might have been naive, but I had no idea what marijuana was as a freshman. And by the time I'm a senior, it's just everywhere. And so there were some major changes during those 4 or 5 years. It was just real interesting. And in talking with my sister and her age group, even though they were just 3 and 4 and 5 years older, there was just a different mindset. It was a little bit different time.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat.
That's
to see that
interesting.
change.
Yeah, to be there at that sort of pivotal point.
Uh-huh.
Culturally, for the whole
and
country,
that
but-
was towards the end of our last year
Yeah.
too. It wasn't.
And just a lot of things like hours. You know, my freshman year, the girls had to be in to the dorms or the sorting houses by 10 o'clock on weeknights, and I think midnight. I don't know if it was 1 o'clock on weekends, but by Pam's senior year, they had to be in by 7 a.m.
We had to turn our key in. It's by 7 in the morning.
And we've always laughed at that. I guess was that so they could say they had hours?
Yeah, and then it didn't last much. But my senior year, we had to check out a key. I checked out a key to the house, and then it had to be in the. I think it was. I don't know who the house manager or monitor. I don't know who would check to be sure the keys were turned back in every morning.
But that's just an example of how how that all changed in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So much.
Whereas the big shift between people who went to OSU in the late 50s was the check-in time went from like 8 to 9.
Oh.
Yeah.
The 4 or 5 year period, which was just like 9 o'clock.
Oh.
It's hard for me to imagine. I mean, having it in that context is really interesting to think about. When you start there, your expectation is you're going to be suited up. You're going to have a tie on for class. You're going to be groomed, and then by the end of it,
Yeah.
roll out of bed and go to class almost, it sounds like.
When I pledged as a sophomore, you could not wear any Greek insignia on campus, like a t-shirt or sweatshirt. You couldn't, and jeans, you didn't wear that onto campus. And in fact, since I was raised in a house full of boys, perhaps, I don't know, my sister and I never wore jeans until we were not allowed to wear jeans until I went to the Army surplus store when I was in Colorado and bought some jeans, and my mother was horrified. I was a freshman that I was wearing jeans out of the house. The bell-bottom jeans.
And that's when
So-
you were a freshman in Colorado?
I came back and bought those, so I didn't wear jeans around my mom for a while. But we couldn't, if you were on campus, you had to be in a nice pair of pants or a skirt and a sweater.
And that was a sorority rule?
That was a sorority. Our first, I know my sophomore year, I think the junior year it started to lax up, and maybe I'm not supposed to tell this, but I was on the standards committee because I was an officer, and we had one of our standards meetings was one of the girls did not wear a bra in the lobby, and it embarrassed her boyfriend. And we had a meeting about this, and it was just funny because I didn't wear a bra either, but it didn't matter. No one could tell. But, it was like, I just thought, oh my goodness. So that was it. That was my senior year that they were discussing that.
Well, what was the verdict? Like, what was there?
I think that, I don't remember what the verdict was, but I think she was just reprimanded. She had to wear a bra when she was out of her room. Under her sweatshirt or whatever it was.
New rules.
Yeah.
Was there anything written about that beforehand?
I don't know. I was only on standards for one semester because then I left to do my student teaching.
Right. What some of those transitions that were happening, even specifically that you're talking about within your sorority, how are those changes being made? Was it something that was being pushed as a greater campus or from the sorority members? Was there pushback?
I think it was pretty much divided. People, we just had a few people who seemed to be a little more free-spirited. I think your sorority girls, as a general rule, are probably pretty conservative publicly. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, but publicly, because I probably didn't tell anybody, well, I don't wear a bra either, no one seems to know.
You didn't fess up at the
at
the hearing about that
I
reprimand?
don't think I said anything. But I just remember there were some girls who were just a little more free-spirited than others. But it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of it. We were still just making that transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
You're asking about how those changes came, though, and I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was just it was an evolution, but it happened pretty fast when you think about it. But it wasn't like there was just a leader of a movement to change this overnight. But it was pretty much a general consensus. I think just suddenly things just started changing.
Mhm.
Just, loosened up.
Well, because I think in other parts of the country, they had really made a big change. So, we were just,
And,
we always
Catching
talk
up.
about what they were doing on the coast. That was always, what they're wearing and what they're doing. We just felt like we were not isolated or protected, but just slow.
What did the professors think about? Do you all remember that transition from more formal to less formal? Was there any pushback from some of the classroom?
I don't remember.
I don't remember it all.
Anything being said.
Mm-mm.
I remember the same way. With the faculty, you had those that were much more liberal and those that were more conservative. And,
Sure.
it was a lot more fun to get a professor who was liberal,
Mhm.
and so there was change, I guess, going on that we probably weren't aware of at the faculty level, administrative level. Yeah, but there was probably quite a bit of kind of leaving some old ways, and because it was especially my senior year, it became part of the unrest on OSU's campus. It wasn't just focused like on protests in the Vietnam War. It was students feeling like that they weren't involved in policy, making that affected student life, and they wanted a greater voice, in those administrative decisions, and felt like they were still being treated as children, even though now they're 21 and away from home and college students, but it was still very conservative and from an administrative standpoint. So that was kind of a big thing,
Mhm.
as well as the more national agendas that were out there too.
You also mentioned earlier that there were a lot of changes going on geared towards race on campus as well. Was there anything that you can remember with that unrest that dealt specifically with that? Was it common to have, I guess, international students maybe a little bit more, but even just more Black people in classes? Like, was that something that was an issue at that point? I mean, it's not really in the integration area, but kind of is, in that same kind of time period when all that change was going on. Do you remember anything going on with that?
I was just aware that I think the Black students became more outspoken and more organized,
Mm-hmm.
and were bringing things to the surface and making some demands, and there's some resulting racial tension out of that, and there were a few things that happened just off campus. I remember a few fights and some broken windows, and then even in the part of Stillwater that was predominantly Black, I was driving through one night and had a brick thrown through my windshield, and so there was some trouble, but
That's pretty scary.
it was I guess it never got just totally violent or out of hand on a broad scale, but there were tensions there.
Mm-hmm. Did you tell your parents about you getting a brick thrown through your windshield?
I did, because I had to get my car back home to get a windshield replaced.
What did they think about that?
Nothing.
No? Didn't worry them?
One more thing Steve did.
No, it was no. I'm sure they were glad I wasn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it was.
Was that just a passing incident, or was there anything
I
else around
I
that?
was just a random target.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out later that then on the strip on Washington Street there had been a fight that night, and it was racial problems, and so that had just kind of spread into the neighborhood, and I was driving through the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was just
You were there.
I was just there. Yeah.
That's interesting. So when did you all meet?
We actually met towards the end of the semester,
My
Pam's
junior
junior
year.
year and my senior year, and in one of the bars there on Washington Street, and I walked by a booth, and Pam was sitting with one of my fraternity brothers, and stopped and visited with him, and he introduced us, and I just kind of filed that away, and so whenever came back for another semester that fall, and I asked him if the girl he had introduced me to, if they were dating. He said, oh, we had a few dates this summer, but no, we're not. And I said, well, how about fixing me up? So I think he and one of Pam's sorority sisters got together, and so we had a study break date on a Thursday night, went out for a cup of coffee, because we had a date to a ball game that Saturday, so we thought maybe it'd be
Maybe we
nice
should meet
to,
and see,
to meet before
see
we
if
go
it's going to work out.
spend the afternoon together. So we did that, and then made it to the ball game that weekend, and saw each other, I think, every day that next week. So
It was pretty
Just
fun.
kind
We
of-
were just,
the timing was right, and Pam was back, for her senior year, and I was back for a fifth year, and just kind of clicked.
Mm-hmm.
So
it worked. But sometime, I don't know when, I asked Steve, I said, what are you going to do when you graduate? Because he was going to graduate at semester. And he said, oh, I'm going back to Poteau to work. And I thought, oh, God, I need to get out of this, because I've heard my sister, she'd come down to Poteau with a friend. I said, I've heard about Poteau, and I don't want to, we're seniors. I don't want this to get any more serious. I need to get out of this. But we kept having fun.
Did you ever tell him that you were having those thoughts?
I've heard this story.
Well, I know since while they were going on.
No, I didn't. No, because I was just having fun. I had a long-term boyfriend, and I just started, getting back into the dating and having fun. And I was not looking for anything permanent. So we just had a good time.
Pam went to the city to practice teach, and I got a job at the state capitol with the legislative council during that session, and so I was living in the city and she was in the city, so we continued to date. But at some point when she asked me to marry her, I said, if we're going to do this, it needs to be fast. I don't want a long engagement. So we got engaged in April and married in June.
Okay, wait, who asked who to marry who?
He says I asked him. I think the talk was, well, if we were to get married, if this, I think that's how it went.
You didn't start with if we were to get married is Poteau in our future.
Yeah, really. No, I decided, I think I really was a small town girl at heart, probably. I spent those few years in Shawnee, so I was familiar with, but this was really small. But we did, it's been good. Yeah.
I mean, a great place to raise a family. And so it's worked well.
It's worked.
So when did you come to Poteau then?
In July of 1971. Just, we got married in June and moved back here in July. So 45 years ago.
45 years this summer.
Wow, it's a long time. I mean, it's a long time to stay on what you weren't sure was.
Yeah. Well, I made a commitment. It's been good. Yeah.
So quick decision to marry, but long-term dating.
That's right.
Long-term casual dating.
Well, we had a lot of fun though. I mean, we just hit it off. We just had fun together.
Mhm.
So says, well, Steve's been patient. I went home a lot. I went back to Oklahoma City a lot. My dad died just before we got married, so I ended up, going back home, be with my mom and my little sister a lot. I mean, just that first year. Yeah, I was trying to just keep everything moving nicely.
I guess maybe your dad had an opinion for a while, but how did they feel about you moving down to Poteau?
Well, when Steve went to my dad to talk to him and tell him what he said.
Oh, her dad was a big Republican and I'm a Democrat, and I said, Mr. Buck, would you be okay with a Democrat in the family? That's how I asked. And he hesitated for just a minute. But we didn't spend much time together, he and I, but got along fine. He just didn't live long enough. So, but that's how I asked if he would be okay with us marrying. So.
And he said, "Would you consider changing?"
Oh yeah, he did say that. And I had to say no.
When we were going to tell my parents, the OU wrestling coach was there for my little brother, talking to my family about my little brother, and so we would go by and his card would still be there, and so then finally when it was gone, then we got to come in. So my parents kind of got bombarded that night, and but Tony ended up going to OSU playing football instead. But it was an interesting night. And that was in April, and then we got married in June. We had to move our date a little bit. My dad died, and then my little sister was in a car wreck 2 days before we were supposed to be married. So I know people thought it probably wasn't supposed to be, but we did it. As soon as she got out of the hospital, we got 14 people together and we got married.
That's great. That's fantastic.
So.
And then we moved back down here, and so suddenly you're removed from OSU, and we were able to get back to some ball games that first couple of years. Then you start having children, and I was working 6 days a week, and it became more and more difficult.
And they had Saturday soccer, so
yeah.
About 4.
The weekend activities start, and so we reached a time when we didn't get back on campus very often for several years. Yeah. And then I stayed involved. We formed a Flore County OSU Alumni Association, and we would charter a bus and go over to Little Rock. OSU played Arkansas, but it was always at Little Rock, and so we would go over to that game and kind of created an alumni group here in the county, and that was fun, and it was all ages, and some from over at Haskell County too that would go with us, and so we did that, and that kept us in touch, I think, with OSU, and then OSU would do the Alumni Association sponsored academic banquets that were recruiting banquets for juniors around the state, and so I put those on for like 14 years, and we would invite all of the juniors in Flore County who were in their National Honor Society or in the top 20% of their class, and invite them and their parents to come to a large banquet we would do at the Civic Center here in Poteau. And we would have, 200, 250 people. They were really well attended. And Merle Rogers was the head of the Alumni Association then, and they would either fly or drive in, and they would do a multimedia presentation which consisted of a movie on the screen and 2 slideshows going on the left and right.
And it was a big deal. Every time we saw it, it's like, oh my God, we were just so proud. It was.
But it was a great recruiting tool. We had a lot of kids from Flore County during those years that went to OSU. And then it became where financially, it just wasn't real feasible, and they started phasing them out and pulling it down to to just some Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and a few of the, maybe Lawton, Bartlesville, you know, just the larger towns, and phased out the old county student, you know, recruiters. So
Has the areas, has that student attendance from this area to OSU gone down?
I think it
I mean, I know there's no concrete way for you to know.
right, but it's strong for a few years. You'll have, you know, I just know like Poteau students. Some years you might have 6, 8, or 10 kids that go from here to Stillwater, and then maybe the next year 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it varies a lot.
And a lot of them, they'll do 1 or 2 years at Carlisle, at the state college, and then they'll go. But I don't really know how the attendance is now. It's real interesting when your children get older. You kind of get out of of what's going on. You don't really know as much.
But then as our kids got older, then we were taking them to OSU, and so we were back on the road again and getting back to ball games, and then I was on the old alumni association board, and even was on the executive committee at one point, and that's when my daughter decided not to go to OSU, and I told Jerry Gill, I said, there's no need for me to stay on the board. I can't recruit my own daughter, and I need to get off, and I did. And Pam still gives me a hard time because when it was decision night, I remember we were up in Kelly's room sitting on her bed, and that's when Ford just came out with the Explorer, and I told Kelly, I said, if you will go to OSU, I will buy you a Ford Explorer. I will open you a charge account at the Wooden Nickel and give you a credit card.
And a spring break trip.
And a spring break trip. And Pam is just sitting there saying,
I'm going, that's not fair. And Kelly, she goes, Dad, it's not where I want to go.
I said, well, it's not about being fair. It's where she needs to go to school. So, and she said the reason she didn't want to go to OSU is that she was just too comfortable there. That we had taken her to OSU so many times, and she just felt so comfortable and enjoyed it, and she just wanted something more of a challenge. So
Where'd she go?
she went to Vanderbilt.
She got a challenge.
That is a little bit ways away, yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't have any luck with all 3 children. None of them went to OSU. So we've got grandchildren now to work on.
You've still got some time.
That's right.
Yes, we're working on that.
Some less time than others.
That's right.
Well, that's it. But that's interesting though, because you kept that culture going. I mean, you took them to games, and you all still had that as a part of your family events, though.
Yeah.
You still felt a part of that culture. I want to get back to some of the events that the student recruitment events that you had here, and sort of what was the momentum behind that? Was there a lot of people helping to organize that? Was there a lot of community support behind that effort to try and recruit for OSU?
It was coming out of the Alumni Association office.
Oh, was there
in
and it was
Stillwater.
pushing? Okay.
Yes, and they basically designed the program, and we just did all the groundwork here. We did the invitations. Right. I would line up people to be on the program, and then they would do their presentation. But
it was very well attended.
Yeah.
It was well done.
Yeah.
And so that went on for really 12 or 15 years. We did that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think most students would find appealing about OSU from the Flore County?
I think and I found this too, even if there are 20,000 students there, you feel like the majority of them are small town backgrounds. And I know there are a lot of kids from Tulsa and Oklahoma City and Dallas, but still there are a lot of small town kids that go to OSU, and I'm always aware of that. And when you look at the kids that are named each year, as outstanding seniors or whatever honors that they're getting, and you go and look at the still the majority of them are not from the Metroplex. And so I just think it's pretty cool. And kids can sense that. They know that they're more at home there than they would be at other campuses.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's something to being from a rural area and finding comfort in other people from rural areas when you're making some transitions. Well, tell me a little bit about, you talked a little bit about your ties with OSU after you came back to Poteau after you graduated, but talk a little bit about what you all, like what did you do with yourselves? I know there was some teaching involved, there was some family business taking over involved. Like explain to me what that means though. Like what happened?
In our personal lives?
Well, we had Kelly, and then I quit teaching after I was teaching when I got pregnant, so I quit and thought about working part-time.
You were teaching in the Poteau school system?
I was teaching in the Poteau system, and that was when, I really enjoyed my teaching, but I talked to my pediatrician about it, and, or Kelly's pediatrician, and it was like, if you want to, like the first 2 years is when you need to be home with them. If you could wait and to not have to go back to work. So then by the time the second year was over, I was pregnant again. So I was very fortunate I got to stay home with my kids. And I know that. And my friends, the ones of us who were able to do that, the friends here, we all were real aware that we were in the minority because women were going back to work. And several of our friends had their children immediately went back to work. And we didn't, and it was nice. Until after my third child, then it was like, I need to be with some adults. So I started, I was a fitness instructor at Carl Albert for about 14 years. Mm-hmm. So that was just part-time, and it also kept me in shape, kept me motivated, kept me with young people. I had classes. I volunteered at the elementary school during recess to lead classes, and then I went all the way to the nursing home. So I had all ages. I had from little kids and then college students, ladies my age and older. I had a class of ladies who are my age now, but I was 20 years younger, 30 years younger than them, and then nursing home. So I just got to stay involved that way, and that was very fulfilling for me.
A couple of years, the coach at the college had the baseball team take Pam's aerobics class in the off season, and she said they would come in that first day thinking this is just going to be, a piece of cake, and by the time it was over with, she would have them just. I
was trying real hard to work them.
And the coach would be in there with them, and they had to do,
And he's still the baseball coach, and he keeps those boys. They were very well mannered. This was the first time thing. I did that about 3 off seasons, and then it was like I didn't work part time until my mom got sick, and I needed to be not going to sit anymore. So, and then I just never went back. I got to retire. But Steve, when he had to work 6 days a week, that was not as much fun. That Saturday when I was home with kids, it was not. I didn't like that much, so he was able to. He kind of changed careers when he was 40. He went into banking at 40, and so then banker's hours aren't really just 9
Well, then I just had to work a half day on Saturday.
Yeah, for a
And
while.
so
You did have to work half day on Saturday.
Wait, how does that happen?
And then now, he has a whole weekend. But that was the first time. When you work for a bank, you have to take 2 weeks. You have to be off of, I guess, two consecutive weeks. We'd never had, it was like, that was unbelievable. We had 2 weeks. And our kids would go to summer camp down in Camp Ozark, and we would take a vacation. So that was fun.
So you'd have to take mandatory 2 weeks?
Had to take, we weren't gone the whole time, but that was very nice.
Well, so talk a little bit before you made that switch. What is it that you did when you came back from college?
I went to work with Dad, and my granddad had passed away in '67. So Dad had been running everything by himself. So I think he was important to me coming back. And we had retail stores. We had a department store, a hardware, True Value Hardware, a furniture store, and a supermarket. And so I was general manager over those retail stores. And I did that until 1989. And decided that I really wanted to do something other than retail in a small town the rest of my life. And so I started phasing out of the family retail businesses. I ended up with a lot of residential and commercial rental property. And then I started doing oil and gas leasing kind of on the side and at night. And had some success doing that. Some early success, and then typical of the industry, things were just good, and then all of a sudden they were bad, and I had to work out of that, and finally I was able to come back to the top of that cycle the next time and get everything cleaned up, and then I sold the rental property and moved over into banking, and so that was a nice transition.
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
Was your dad still alive by this point? Right? Well, yeah, he was, because you interviewed him a handful of years ago.
He was.
So how did he feel about you getting out of the family business?
Probably he didn't like it, but I mean, we never had any real conflict about it. I just told him, that's really what I felt like I needed to do,
And that was all hard, for Steve to have to do.
And I phased out over a couple of years. I didn't just walk out one day. So that all worked. But we were involved in the bank in a minority position, and I had become a bank director in 1972. So I had some experience in banking, through those years, and then our position in the bank changed in the late 70s, and so I think he realized that it was better for all of us for me to be involved in banking on a day-to-day basis and have hands-on, taking care of that part of our assets, and so that part, and then I think once I did that, everything smoothed out real well after that. And Dad was chairman of the board at the bank until his death, and I was CEO, and then became chairman after he died. So I looked back. My grandfather moved to Poteau in 1926 and became a director of the bank. And from 1926 until now, we've been involved in Central National Bank in some way. My granddad served as an interim president after the death of a president until that position was filled, and then my dad did the same thing in 1979 or 80 for a short period. So it's real interesting how long we've been involved.
Steve's granddad, who I never met, he went to school through 5th grade. He was quite which I guess is not that uncommon back then. I didn't realize that, particularly maybe for this part of the state. He was quite the wheeler dealer and quite a personality.
Yeah, it's probably more uncommon to go through the 5th grade even then and then end up being director of the bank, or have those sorts of positions.
But he was a gifted, horse and mule trader, and I didn't grasp that for a long time. And then we were back east touring something, and they talked about it. It made you realize that was the how the work was done and transportation was done, how important horses and mules were in everyday life. And so if that was your strength and you were good at it, you were right in the middle of everything. So he started out doing that, and then he and my grandmother bought a little old 12-foot wide retail general merchandise store 9 miles from here, and then it just grew from that. And at one time he had 10,000 acres and a herd of 2,000 Angus cattle and all of those retail businesses and a Pontiac dealership and a cotton gin and a feed mill, and it just went on and on. So it's one of those neat stories.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah. Well, so I have a question. You coming from OSU back to Poteau, and then it sounds like you were pretty young from the first time you were made as the director, or either on the board of directors or the director of the bank, right? On the board of directors.
And he had long hair.
Really?
This is the early 70s. Yeah.
No, I don't mean that. I'm not surprised because of that.
No.
I'm not surprised you had hair. I'm surprised they let you on the board of directors with long hair.
Oh yeah, there's a picture of him in that room.
But I mean, you would have been
full beard.
So really looking like you should be wearing bell bottoms.
Yeah. No, not a lot, but some of the salesmen would comment. You know,
Really?
to come back to this small town, and not that we were rebels by any means. That's just what everybody looked like.
Right.
You know, you wore your I had hair like down to here. You know, it's just.
But you were in your 20s when
Right.
you first took on that role.
Yeah.
That's
He was.
straight out of college. I'm wondering a few things. The first one is the time you had at OSU. Do you feel like that had any impact in your ability to deal with that sort of transition, to roll into that sort of not only business but something like board of directors?
Well, you know, luckily I've grown up in businesses. I mean, you know, a carry-out boy in the supermarket,
Mhm.
and you know, I worked in the department store, the hardware, and had done everything. So that helped. It wasn't like I didn't have some real experience, but to come back and be in your 20s and suddenly you're the general manager, yeah, that was a little more difficult. And I just had to be careful, you know, how I eased into that, and these were good people I was working with. So, you know, over time, I mean, it all worked well. But yeah, I'm sure there was some things that I didn't hear that were said, but it worked out okay.
Did you feel pressure about any of it?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah, and there was a lot to learn and a lot of responsibilities, and but it was such a variety of things. I mean, we would go down to Dallas and buy clothing, and then I would go to Chicago and buy hardware, and then, you know, be down working at the supermarket, and so it was so broad that it made it, you know, pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Which is for Steve. Steve likes to do a lot of different things. He's lots of talents. So I think you kind of thrived on all that.
But I did.
But he did realize that's not really retail is hard.
It is hard.
You're in a small town. You get lots of feedback, and that's not what he wanted to do forever.
But that's where I used my marketing. I did, you know, I did all the advertising for all those different businesses, and I used to run 10 radio spots a day on the local station, and it was the weather brought to you by Holton Stores. But first this word from Steve Holton, and then I would do this 30-second radio spot, and then they'd do the weather. And especially our older customers, they would stop me on the street and they would ask me weather questions. Because they're hearing me 10 times a day, you know, with the weather, and so they were always wanting to know what they could expect tomorrow. But that was my routine every Wednesday night. I would write as many as 7, 9. I'd usually do an odd number, 30-minute radio spots, and then I would go out and tape these, and then they were rotated, 10 a day until I did new ones the next week. So I was quite the radio personality.
Where did you come up with an idea like that? I'm just curious.
He has lots of good ideas. Oh, he still has lots of good ideas. some ideas we toss out, but he's always coming up. I mean, I'm just always amazed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
You want to get back to OSU?
We can get back to OSU.
well, now
I
Steve
think
did
this is-
do this. He was the speaker at commencement. Are you going to tell that story?
I can.
Go for it.
I think he should because he was the last student speaker.
I
at
was.
commencement.
Oh, yeah.
They still have class officers, and
And I saw these signs before I met him. He made really goofy campaign signs, and I would see him around campus and think, who in the world is that? I married him.
What were you campaigning for?
we had class officers
For a
at
class
OSU,
officer.
and so I ran for senior class president and was elected, and then we abolished class officers because they really were pretty much ceremonial. By that point, there was student government, and you know student senators, and that's the real representatives of the students on campus. It wasn't class officers, but that had been carried forward for forever. So I was the last senior class president, and as senior class president, I was asked to speak at commencement, and I did that. And that was during this time we talked about of campus unrest, and I did have a real concern that OSU could end up, with some serious problems on campus, and I chose to address that at commencement. And my heart was in the right place. I should have spoken from my heart, but instead I did it more formal.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some help from a psychology professor and an English professor in my, wording and structure. And I think, looking back, if I had just done it more, like I say, from my heart, I think it would have been better received, because it was just expressing the concern of the hostility that was growing between the student body and the administration, and that there needed to be better communications, and there needed to be respect shown on both sides, and that we needed to avoid, something like Kent State, or even occupying, buildings and that type of thing. But the tone of it, I guess, came across maybe a little more threatening or anti-administration or anti-school than I certainly intended it to be. But
For a graduation speech.
Yeah.
I mean, you were, like you say,
the
it's
time
something
and
that
place-
meant a lot to him, but
Yeah,
it
probably-
perhaps wasn't the right
Probably
time.
the
But
right time to do it. So, I got standing ovations from the students there, but I got hate mail afterwards from parents. Like, hope you burn in hell type letters, because of bringing up that topic at a time of celebration for their families and their students. That it just wasn't the place to do that. And my own mother wouldn't talk to me. So.
but faculty had reviewed it.
The
or
administration had, and so Dr. Kahn was very unhappy, and his vice president, Abe Hesser, Abe was kind of a hatchet man, and so he called me in and said that he wished there was something he could do, but I was too close to graduation, so he really just couldn't get me at that point. But someday, I would regret that. So anyway, that was kind of, a rough way to have commencement go. But the next year I'm back, and I'm in Blue Key, and I'm chairman of the Parents' Day, and I'm down on the 50-yard line with Dr. Kahn, helping hand out awards to parents. So, life goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next year after you graduated, you came back and...
I needed 3 more hours.
he didn't graduate.
Oh, you had the last semester, that's right.
Yeah.
He came back then. Yeah.
So you did your commencement not when you walked, but the year you should have the year you were senior president,
Right.
senior class president. I understand.
Yeah.
Well, did you ever regret it?
As I've said at other, through graduations in our children's graduations, I thought, yeah, that probably wasn't the place to express those concerns.
But you really didn't have an opportunity. There's not
No,
like,
no, there wasn't.
But things were a little bit different, or quite a bit different. You
Yeah.
didn't have an opportunity to. And like you say, you were speaking from your heart and what you really felt. So
Well, I think it's telling that the students reacted so enthusiastic, it sounds like, based on what you had to say. I mean, it sounds like it resonated with your peers,
Right.
but maybe not with their parents or their parents' peer
or the
group.
older, or an older generation, perhaps.
Which-
But,
Yeah.
yeah, which is. But I came back that next, because I was a junior, so then I came back my senior year, and I heard all about the great graduation speech from the year before, and this was before I knew Steve. So it was just interesting to how it was perceived.
So your mom was mad
So
at
we
you?
learned.
Was she? Yeah, right. There, yeah. And yet she still went out with you. What did your dad have anything to say to you about it?
Not too much.
No?
No, not too much.
Huh.
And after that, when I was on the alumni board and other things, and when I would see Dr. Kahn and we would shake hands, and it was always kind of a forced smile, and Steve, so good to see you, and I'd say, so good to see you, Dr. Kahn, and that was kind of our conversation. So kind of left things a little strained. But you really have to go back and take into context what was going on, and it was fairly serious. And there were a couple of organizers from the Students for Democratic Society on campus, and I knew they were there, and so things had the potential to get a lot worse. And
She has no idea who that is.
and
SDS.
I was really I was concerned about that.
No, who's the SDS? Is that what you said?
But it was a national,
Radical movement.
But I was concerned, because I was proud of OSU and still am, and I didn't want to see anything like that happen there.
So I guess if I'm understanding it, it sounds like you felt like by taking the opportunity in a public venue to be able to sort of try and call out some of those potential brewing facets, that was maybe a way to help calm them or diffuse them. I wonder if you felt like the administration and the other sort of that peer group, some of the parents or whatever, had a sense of how much those sorts of things were percolating on campus, like maybe as good a sense as some of the students who were in them.
I don't think parents would have. The administration should have. And I think they were aware of them because their response was to really just kind of buckle down and tighten things up, and instead of maybe more open dialogue and creating new avenues of communication between students and administration, it was more kind of like a little bit more iron-fisted, and that's the way to handle it, and which was supported by people around the state and by parents. They were very supportive of that approach. So, in defense of the administration, they were doing what their constituents or their students' parents would, for the most part, want them to do. So. But they were. Those were just a little bit different times right then, and we don't have anything like that right now. So it's hard to drop back to that time period and kind of you have to remember what was going on to kind of say, well, yeah, but this is why you felt like that was the reason you needed to do this, and you removed now 45 years, and it make quite as much sense maybe.
Makes perfect sense in context.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's really interesting that you took the opportunity to do that. I think a lot of people wouldn't have felt safe enough to do that, or just like you find your one way, your way to protest something that is
Mhm.
meaningful to you, but it's not like you had to have a rallying group to do that or a huge group, but you find ways to express those. It's interesting. Interesting. Of course, nobody called the hatchet man in on you for bowing out of the parade,
Army blades.
but
I don't even know if they have
Still
ROTC
meaningful.
anymore
I think they do.
on campus.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
do?
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah, we were like the auxiliary,
Mhm.
I guess you would say.
yeah, they're across the parking lot from where I
Yeah.
park every day.
Oh, they are. They
Yeah.
practice. We marched. I mean, once a week you go and you practice, and then we did get to do that in the homecoming parade.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. And one time I was a homecoming judge in 2004,
Uh-huh.
about 2004, and that was a highlight.
Mm-hmm.
That was it was very hard. Homecoming decorations are unbelievable. And, but it was very enjoyable. I don't think I'd want to do it again, because every year when we go back and look at my, I'm doing a little judging in my head, and it's like, oh my goodness, this would be difficult.
What was homecoming like while you were there?
It was big, but the house decorations weren't as elaborate.
They weren't, did they move like they move now?
Not nearly.
I didn't remember that.
I mean, like one year in front of the Lemon Kai House, we did a big kind of a paper mache champagne bottle, and it would tilt and look like it was still in a glass, and we thought that was just, an unbelievable house decoration. I don't think we won anything, but we were real impressed with ourselves for doing that. But we still did floats.
Yeah, I worked on a float one year. You were
Yeah.
putting the stuff in it. And it's actually a lot of fun. It really is. It's just real unifying.
But now we can't believe the scale. But on Friday nights, the walk around, wow, it's just amazing.
Well, and I wonder about this because now they spend weeks, if not a month or more, working on these visibly where people can walk past and try and see.
Right.
And before that, they've even, done their planning and gotten all that approved. And there's just a lot to it that people don't realize before they start stuffing.
Was it that long of a process when you all were involved in it?
No,
I don't think it was
because
at
it
all.
wasn't that complex.
Mm-mm.
And the floats were, if I remember right, they were kind of secret. They were done in warehouses around town where you would have them out of the weather. And so, your fraternity and sorority doing a float, people didn't really know what that float was going to look like until the parade, or they weren't supposed to. So you kind of hopefully had a
seems
little
like
edge on your
There were more
decorations.
floats than there were
Uh-huh.
house decorations at that time.
Yeah, I think
And
you're
then,
right.
over the years, it's evolved into this unbelievable house decorations.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a real good opportunity. You work together for a common goal and create great memories, because we still remember it. So, and the walk around's a good recruiting tool. That's our granddaughter. We've got to get her to
I
homecoming,
think
do
so.
walk around, and then
Yeah,
again.
you're lax on your plotting. You're figuring out to remember.
So, because that's pretty cool, pretty unique.
So what were some of the things that the two of you did socially while you were dating in Stillwater?
Well, we went to one Lambda Chi party, and I said, that's it. Went to one hobo party. I hadn't been to very many fraternity parties, and it was like, oh my goodness. So we went to one.
So what was going on there that made you not want to
And
go
it's
back?
just a lot of wildness. A lot of wildness. And Steve had
This
decided-
is taking a different direction than I thought it was going in.
Well, no, and Steve.
No, her response.
No, and Steve, he goes, I think I'm through with these. He was.
Well, I was back for 50 years.
Yeah, 50. He goes,
was kind of starting to party on down a little bit, and that was good.
Yeah.
But
Well, the first week we went out, we went to a music festival, we went to the fair in Oklahoma City, we flew kites somewhere.
just
We just you know, he took me to the lady who made his candles out in Perkins.
some real highlights.
So, what else did we do that we can tell?
Well, that's the key.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about when I interviewed Mom and Dad in the Overstreets, and they were talking about the cost of things then.
Oh yeah.
Even in 1968, 1970, for $5 you could have a day, go to the movies, go down to the Coachman and have a pitcher of beer for $1.25. And so you could, for $5, you could have a pretty nice day.
Yeah.
And I think where that gets you now.
Not even popcorn.
It doesn't,
Yeah, not even
doesn't do the
popcorn.
concession stand. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we just did a variety of things, I think.
What about that's a good point though about the cost of things. That's one of the things that comes up often in alumni interviews is the cost of tuition, cost of going to school, and and what scholarships or if there were anything available that you all took advantage of while you were there, or if you had jobs while you were there. I mean, I wonder how you all made it through financially for school, or was the tuition cost? I know it was much different, but
Yeah, I just worked in the summers and I worked for my dad. So,
Mhm.
and that's another thing that did keep me in school though, because I knew I did not want to. I wanted a degree, so I didn't have to work for my dad.
there's motivation.
That's right.
Yeah, my mom and dad did motivate me. Yeah, but
What did
Steve
you do for
worked-
your dad during the summer?
Oh, I was in his. He had an oil company, and I was in the office. And I thought I do not like secretarial work. This is not what I want to do. And both my brothers were working for older brothers were working for my dad at the time. And I didn't want to do that. But Steve worked all the way through. You worked in college.
I was like associate editor of the yearbook of the Redskin, and it was a paying position. And then I worked for the dean of students. And these were all part-time jobs at school. And I think a house bill was $110 a month. And I don't remember what tuition was, but just fractional to what it is now.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I wonder is, it seems like, did you feel like you could put yourself through school or get close to that by working while you were going to school?
No, I didn't.
Or not at all,
with the jobs I had, and my family, helped me tremendously going through school.
Mm-hmm.
But I had, I had friends and fraternity brothers who were earning the majority of the cost of them to be at college, and from summer jobs and then working part-time while they were in school. So there were a lot of kids doing that, and they were busy.
Yeah.
I had one fraternity brother who would do the wheat harvest, and he would end up almost in Canada by the end of the summer. And he said the good thing about it, all they did was work, and they didn't have a chance to spend their money. And so he would come back, in pretty good shape. And then several of the guys would sell Bibles, and they would make a tremendous amount of money.
On campus?
No. You went door to door.
Yeah, they would be in the South, maybe in
the
Georgia or
summer.
Alabama.
A lot of people did that.
Really?
Yeah, I had forgotten that.
If you'll go in the alumni building, in the hallway with all the pictures, there's a picture of one of the classes, Southwest Bible, and some information on it. But a lot of OSU students did that, and like I say, it was very lucrative.
Was it something that was it just a job, or was it?
No, it was a job.
Okay.
It was, this was a national company who recruited college students who were
like encyclopedia salesmen.
good salesmen.
Door-to-door Bibles.
Exactly.
They were selling Bibles. And,
Interesting.
I know one guy that went to school for 8 or 10 years. he had a Corvette that he would put in a garage, and he would get an older junker and go into the South and sell Bibles, and he worked his way up where he was a team leader or whatever the title was, and made a lot of money, and then would come back and get the vet back out of the garage and enjoy, going to college and having an apartment and having spending money, and he took his time going through school. But that was one of the more interesting summer jobs that I knew that a few people I knew that did that.
It's very different.
Yeah, that would be a fun interview to talk to one of them.
Yeah, I'll have to keep my ear out for someone who's done that. That's interesting.
Learn about the organization, the training they got, and then their experiences going door to door.
I had friends who, in the summertime, they would be camp counselors, somewhere that several girls did that. I don't know what else people did to work.
They used to go out to Tahoe and be cocktail waitresses.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they loved Oklahoma kids.
They did, because they were hardworking, is what we always said. But I did, you're right, I'd forgotten that.
There was like an Oklahoma outflux during the summer to
in the
Tahoe.
summertime to go out there,
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. A lot of those are ones I haven't heard. Yeah, it's an interesting point, because a lot of to talk to someone who's graduated in the last 10 years versus talking to someone who graduated, say, like the 40s, that answer is extremely different on, how you, the expectation of how you get through school.
Yeah.
And what sort of financial shape you come out at the other end. So it's...
Yeah, I don't know. Student loans, when we were in school, I don't know if anyone did that.
I know. And I may have had friends who were on scholarship, and I don't know it. As far as need scholarship, I don't know. But
I think the loans were mainly the parents were taking out the loans to help the children go through school. But I don't know what the student loan structure was.
Yeah.
Or there was one.
It's interesting. Right.
But I don't think kids came out of college with a lot of debt. They didn't come out with anything, but they didn't have debt.
Came out with a great education.
that's right.
Excuse me.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's any points that I had.
You need that you can remember?
Oh, I've got one other story.
Bring it on.
Dr. Campbell was president at OSU, and he had not come over to the southeastern part of the state. And our state senator thought that he needed to come over and get acquainted with us. And so we put together a 2-day tour for him to come from Stillwater to the Flore County, and we were going to take him to what we considered our highlights. And so Dr. Campbell came in and spent the night, and we started early the next morning. I borrowed a 12 or 14 passenger van and picked everyone up, and we had Dr. John Montgomery, a veterinarian from here in Poteau, who was on the Board of Regents at the time, and Senator Hamilton, and myself, and my dad, and Jerry Gill was with us from Stillwater, and several other people. And we had the van loaded, and we started out at the Kerr Foundation and toured that, and then loaded up and drove down to Heavener to a hatchery. And we completed that tour. We loaded up in the van and pulled out and started heading back up towards Poteau. And I was driving the van, and Dr. Campbell was in the passenger seat. Dr. Montgomery was back behind us. I think Jerry was all the way back at the back of the van. But I looked over at Dr. Campbell, and he had no color. And he was doing his left hand like this and had his eyes closed. And I said, Dr. Campbell, are you okay? And he just nodded his head yes, but he didn't answer me. And I thought, boy, he's not okay. And so I just stepped on the gas and started heading for the hospital. And I turned around and I said, Dr. Montgomery, I think we have a serious problem here. So Doc leaned up and started talking to the president. I remember putting my flashers on, and I was passing people on the right, and I looked in my rearview mirror at one point, and I made eye contact with Jerry, and I remember he wasn't aware of what was going on in the front seat at that time, and it was just like, Steve, what the hell are you, we're not in that big hurry. What are you doing? Driving on the wrong side of the road and shoulders. And anyway, we got him up to the hospital, and I was on the hospital board at the time, and we had just talked about a new drug. I think it's streptokinase, I think was the drug, but it was a new drug that if you could administer that within 30 minutes or an hour of a heart attack, that it would either completely eliminate or it would greatly lessen permanent damage to the heart. And so we had that drug on hand, and we got him up here, and they used that and got him stabilized and got him into ICU. Well, the next thing was we needed to get him out of Poteau and get him to Tulsa, Oklahoma City. And a freak snowstorm set down on Poteau, and it just shut us down, and we couldn't fly a plane in, we couldn't drive an ambulance out, and so we ended up having to keep the president another night and all the next day, and then finally they got a private jet out of Tulsa, converted it to kind of a hospital transport, and flew it into Fort Smith, and we were able to load President Campbell up into an ambulance and get him from Poteau to Fort Smith and load him onto that jet. And I drove his wife over. We followed the ambulance to the airport that night and got him loaded. And they took him to Tulsa and completely recovered. And everything worked out fine. But
Whoa.
It's pretty scary.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And he never came back.
What?
When was that?
I can't remember. That was his only visit to southeastern Oklahoma.
Did he enjoy the tour up to that point?
I think so.
Oh gosh, that's stressful for everybody. Did you ever lure anybody else back down for the Stillwater to Flore?
That's it.
I think I have one more note here, and I'm pretty sure this was direct from Karen maybe to ask about the Boren Education Initiative. Does that mean anything to you? That was something Karen, I'm pretty sure, put a bug in my ear.
Well, I'm not sure if she's talking about the Oklahoma Foundation for Excellence. That is,
That could be.
statewide
Yep.
program that when David Boren was U.S. Senator, he started
Foundation
that
for Excellence, yeah.
as a statewide organization. I was a founding trustee
Mm-hmm.
back in 1985, I think. And at that time, I had a full head of hair and a beard, and I said I was the token youth from rural Oklahoma. But I've stayed on that board and was president of the foundation in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and have been involved in that. And so I think that's what she's talking
I think
about.
that's what she was
Yeah.
talking about too.
I thought maybe she was referring to the plan to increase the sales tax to raise teacher salaries, which is also one of David Boren's ideas. But
I think it was the Foundation for Excellence, but you could also talk about that if you wanted.
no, but the foundation is good. When it was started, I think there were 8 public school foundations in Oklahoma, and now there are over 200. There are more public school foundations in the state of Oklahoma than any state.
Mm-hmm.
And I from that experience, formed a Poteau Education Foundation, and so we've been around about 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
But those foundations around the state have, financially have been very supportive of public schools, and also do a lot of teacher recognition, provide funds for teacher training continuing ed and special national conference attendance and that kind of thing. So a lot of neat programs have come out of it.
So what got you started working in that?
Just David Bourne asked me to do it.
Steve, he campaigned for David Bourne with a broom when he first was running.
Running for governor.
Uh-huh.
And then when he was running for Senate.
I mean, that was.
So I knew him from that. And seriously, he probably just needed someone from our part of the state to help start that foundation. And I was over here. So, but
We're a house divided. He's a Democrat and I'm a Republican.
So you've lingered all these years. You followed in your father's footsteps.
I haven't always gotten to vote either down here. Yes.
Yeah.
Couldn't deny my heritage.
Does it cause problems at dinner sometimes?
Never.
no.
We never talk about it.
Oh, sometimes I'll say, well, you're people.
Yeah, he does say that.
How about your children? Are your children one-sided or another politically, or are they divided?
They're pretty conservative.
Mhm.
They are. Yeah.
I think I won them.
Well, I think for me, that's all I knew those were my goals. We talked about this earlier, that we've reached my goals, but if there's
Okay.
anything else that you all want to add, there's still some time for you to do that, or
Do you have any other stories?
anything else you want to talk about that.
Experiences at LSU.
I did.
He was very involved and very active.
Well, if you fell in love every 5 minutes for the first 2 years you were
That was a great
there,
experience. That
not
love.
lasting love until the very end.
That's
I
right.
understand that, but fleeting love.
I just think Pam and I, we've had, like I had talked about earlier times when we weren't as involved because of the stage of our family life, but we've certainly enjoyed almost everything we've done with OHU through the years, and have been able to come back, these last 10 years or whatever, and do things and be involved in.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be over, in your college years when they're gone,
But
by any means.
we've enjoyed, and we're both so impressed with what's going
Oh my goodness.
on campus, and we think Burns Hargis just does a fantastic job, but just so many things are happening. It's just and it's kind of fun because we will go 6 months, maybe 9 months between visits to campus, and the things that happen just in that period. It seems like the last 5 years. We're just blown away when we go back and all of a sudden there's a new building, but it's not just that. It's just the programs and the mindset and just everything.
Well, and it just, the physical appearance though does make a difference, because I can remember even through the years when we'd go by the gardens by the Union and think, this is an agricultural school, why does this look so bad? And then how they have developed those, and my goodness, every time we go by now, it's beautiful. And it wasn't that way for a lot of years. So it's very, very nice, very comforting, I think.
And I think other people are, some have been more involved this 45 years that we've been out of school than others. They stayed at a high level of involvement, but a lot of people were like us, and they've had to slowly come back as they could, and it's been fun to make contact with some of those people that we maybe hadn't really been involved with for 20 years, and now we're back at a ball game or some function and see them. And our class has had a lot of very talented and accomplished people. I mean, they're out of that graduating class of 70 and 71 in those years. Some people that really have gone and done some really great things. So makes you proud of them. Proud to be one of their classmates.
Do you keep in contact with many of your classmates?
Not as much as we
Sporadically,
should.
just sporadically.
But when you get back together, it's always fun. But we're a little off the beaten path, and so we just don't quite attend as many things as some of our old friends and classmates do. But when we do, we enjoy it.
So do you more often come up if it's a sporting event for football or basketball or wrestling or golf or any of the other?
Just maybe a couple of football games a year, and every now and then we make a basketball game or catch a wrestling match. Just sometimes we happen to be there for something, and it just works out where we catch maybe three things. I mean, there'll be a baseball game or a wrestling match we didn't even know about, and so while we're there, we'll just bounce from one to the next. Just take it all in.
On top of Grandparents University.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that's a highlight. For sure. It certainly is.
Well, we've been talking an hour and a half.
Oh, you've got plenty.
Yeah, if you can believe that.
I think you should go through and edit this. That's what I think.
No. All right, but I will stop it unless there's anything else for real.
Unless you have another story, something
No,
interesting.
I've told all the stories I should tell.